The early morning sun hadn't yet burned off the fog when David tightened the worn straps of his backpack and stepped onto the quiet streets. A single dad with a 6-year-old daughter depending on him, he had no car, no shortcuts, just determination. Today was his chance, a job interview that could change their lives. The office was 13 miles away. With each step, his thoughts drifted to Emma. Her breakfast untouched, her tiny shoes lined by the door, and her note scribbled in crayon, "Daddy, I believe in you." That little encouragement fueled him as blisters began forming and his legs ached with every mile. The streets slowly came alive with commuters, some glancing curiously at the man in work boots, carrying nothing but a backpack and hope. David didn't notice the sleek black car following at a distance. Inside sat Jonathan Pierce, the CEO, who had decided to walk to the office for the first time that week to escape the usual traffic. He couldn't help but notice David, a stranger braving the morning chill, walking steadily but clearly struggling. Something about David's resolve struck Jonathan, a raw, unpolished determination he rarely saw in his polished corporate world. He found himself wanting to know this man, to see the story behind those tired eyes. As David approached the last few blocks, his pace faltered. Jonathan decided then and there he couldn't let this effort go unseen, not when the stakes were so high for someone who clearly deserved a chance. David's shoes scuffed along the cracked pavement as the office building loomed closer. His backpack felt heavier with every step, not from the weight of his clothes or documents, but from the invisible burden of hope and fear intertwined. He replayed the interview questions in his head, practiced polite smiles, and imagined telling Emma he had done his best. As he crossed a busy intersection, a car slowed beside him. The window rolled down, revealing a man in a crisp suit with a kind smile. "Excuse me," the man called out. "Do you need a ride?" David hesitated, pride warring with exhaustion. "No, sir. I can manage," he said, though his voice wavered. He had promised himself he would walk every step, proving to Emma that determination mattered more than convenience. The man nodded thoughtfully and drove alongside him, matching his pace. "That's impressive," he said. "Walking 13 miles just for an interview, not many people would do that." David forced a small smile. "It's not about me. My daughter, she needs this. I just can't let her down." Something in that response struck the man deeply. He reached into his car, pulling out a water bottle. "Here," he said gently. "At least stay hydrated." David accepted it with gratitude, the small kindness igniting a spark of warmth in his weary heart. The two continued in companionable silence for a block, and then the man drove off, leaving David at the entrance of the building. He paused, breathing heavily, feeling a strange mix of relief and anticipation. Inside, the lobby was buzzing, but David's mind was elsewhere. He had walked 13 miles, faced his exhaustion, and still kept his dignity. What he didn't know was that the man who had stopped to help him was no ordinary stranger, but the CEO himself, quietly observing the grit and heart that would soon change everything. David's heart pounded as he entered the towering office building. The receptionist's polite smile barely registered, his mind was a whirlwind of nerves and hope. He had prepared for every possible question, yet nothing could prepare him for the raw vulnerability of being a single dad walking 13 miles just to reach this moment. The waiting area felt colder than the morning air outside, and each tick of the clock amplified his anxiety. When a young assistant finally called his name, David stood, straightened his back, and followed her to the interview room. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of Emma's words, "I believe in you." The room was stark, intimidating. Behind the polished desk sat the hiring manager, a stack of papers neatly arranged, a professional mask firmly in place. David launched into his introduction, his voice steady despite the fatigue etched into his features. He spoke about his skills, his experiences, and then, hesitating, he shared his story, the 13-mile walk, his dedication to his daughter, and the struggles that had shaped him. The manager listened silently, eyebrows raising with every sentence, a flicker of respect breaking through the professional veneer. David finished, expecting nothing, but feeling a quiet pride that he had been completely honest. Just as the manager began to speak, the door opened. Jonathan Pierce, the CEO who had noticed David earlier, stepped in. There was a moment of pause, a stillness that seemed to stretch into eternity. Jonathan's gaze met David's, warm and approving. "I couldn't stay silent," Jonathan said. "Not when someone demonstrates that kind of determination and love. We need people like you in this company." David blinked, stunned. The weight of exhaustion, anxiety, and hope collided, and for the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a life where his efforts didn't go unnoticed, a life where his daughter's future could truly change. David could hardly believe his ears. The CEO himself was speaking, acknowledging not just his skills, but the effort, resilience, and love that had carried him through 13 miles of relentless walking. His legs trembled, not from exhaustion this time, but from shock and emotion. Jonathan leaned forward, eyes gentle but unwavering. "David, we want you on our team. And more than that, we want to support someone who shows this kind of determination. You've already proven your dedication, now let us help you succeed." Tears welled up in David's eyes, blurring the office lights into soft halos. He swallowed hard, thinking of Emma waiting at home, her faith in him unwavering. I don't know what to say," he managed. "Thank you. This means more than I can express." Jonathan smiled, then reached into his pocket and handed David an envelope. "Inside, you'll find details for relocation support and a small bonus to help you get started. Consider it a little help for someone who never gives up. But the truth is, your strength and integrity are what earned this." David's hands shook as he accepted the envelope. He felt a surge of relief and hope, a weight lifting from his shoulders that he hadn't even realized he was carrying. Every painful step, every blister, every mile, it had led to this. And for Emma, it meant more than words could convey: stability, security, and proof that persistence pays off. For a moment, the office fell away. All that remained was the undeniable truth that kindness and observation could change lives. Jonathan had seen his struggle, and in an instant, that recognition became life-altering. As David left the building, clutching the envelope and holding his head high, he realized something profound. Sometimes, the smallest acts of attention, just noticing someone's effort, can spark the greatest transformations. David walked home that evening with a lightness he hadn't felt in months. The streets, once long and exhausting, seemed brighter, friendlier. Every step carried a new kind of hope, a hope that was no longer fragile, but alive and tangible. In his backpack, the envelope from Jonathan Pierce felt heavier with promise than it ever had from fatigue. When he reached his small apartment, Emma ran to the door, her eyes wide and sparkling. "Daddy! How did it go?" she asked, bouncing on her toes. David knelt down, pulling her into a warm embrace. "We're going to be okay, pumpkin," he whispered. "Everything's going to change for us." That night, as Emma slept soundly, David read through the documents, realizing the depth of what had been offered: a full-time position with fair pay, relocation support, and resources to help him balance work and parenting. He felt a profound gratitude, not just for the opportunity, but for the human kindness that had made it possible. Days turned into weeks, and David thrived in his new role. Jonathan Pierce checked in personally, mentoring him, appreciating the man who had walked 13 miles with unwavering love for his daughter. At home, David noticed Emma's pride, her drawings now filled with pictures of her dad at work, smiling, happy, and determined. Through the experience, David learned a valuable truth: persistence, honesty, and love don't go unnoticed. And sometimes, the world has a way of rewarding not just skill or talent, but the courage to keep moving forward, step by step, even when the journey feels impossible. As he tucked Emma into bed one night, she whispered, "Daddy, you're my hero." David kissed her forehead and smiled, feeling it deep in his soul. Every step, every struggle, had led to this: a life changed by determination, observed by kindness, and illuminated by love. And in that moment, David knew, hope always finds a way.